the early life and rise to power of Rome's forgotten emperor. A forgotten emperor in the shadow of giants. Imagine a ruler whose reign is marked not by wars, scandals, or grand conquests, but by quiet stability and prosperity, a rarity in the chaotic world of ancient Rome. Antoninus Pius, often overshadowed by his adoptive son Marcus Aurelius and his predecessor Hadrian, stands as an enigma in Roman history. Why has this emperor, who ruled for 23 years in what is considered one of Rome's golden ages, been relegated to the margins of public memory? This is the story of a man who rose from an unassuming background to hold the most powerful position in the ancient world, not through military might or sheer ambition, but through an unparalleled mastery of administration and diplomacy. By delving into his early life and the circumstances that propelled him to power, we uncover the roots of an emperor who embodied the ideals of restraint, wisdom, and quiet leadership. The making of Antoninus Pius. Born on September 19, 86 AD, in the small but prosperous city of Lanuvium, just southeast of Rome, Antoninus Pius came into the world as Aurelius Fulvus Boionius Antoninus. His family was deeply entrenched in the aristocracy, with roots extending to Nemours, modern-day Nîmes in France. The legacy of his forebears, men who had served as consuls and loyal supporters of the Flavian dynasty, cast a long shadow over his early life. Antoninus' upbringing was one of privilege, yet it was not devoid of personal challenges. His father, Titus Aurelius Fulvus, died when Antoninus was still a child, leaving his upbringing to his mother, Arria Fadilla, and his influential grandfathers, both men, pillars of the Roman elite, instilled in young Antoninus a sense of duty, discipline, and an understanding of Rome's intricate political machinery. These early lessons would serve him well in his journey toward the throne. Despite his aristocratic lineage, Antoninus' ascent was far from guaranteed. The Rome of his childhood was a volatile place. The death of Emperor Domitian in 96 AD marked the end of the Flavian dynasty and ushered in an era of uncertainty. The transition to the Nerva-Antonine dynasty, marked by the adoption of competent heirs rather than direct lineage, created a system of meritocracy that would eventually pave the way for Antoninus. The education of a future emperor. Antoninus' education was rigorous, designed to prepare him for the cursus honorum, the sequence of public offices that Roman aristocrats aspired to climb. He studied literature, law, and philosophy, gaining insights from Rome's finest minds. But unlike many of his peers, Antoninus displayed little interest in military exploits. Instead, he gravitated toward administration and jurisprudence, a focus that would define his career and later his reign. Marriage was another critical step in his rise. Around 110 AD, he wed Aeneia Galeria Faustina, a union that not only strengthened his political alliances but also cemented his ties to influential Roman families. Faustina, a woman of remarkable charm and intelligence, played a pivotal role in shaping Antoninus' public image. Together, they would raise a family, though tragedy struck when 3 of their 4 children died young, a stark reminder of the fragility of life in ancient Rome. Climbing the ladder of power. Antoninus' early career exemplified the steady, calculated path of a Roman statesman. As a young man, he served as quaestor and praetor, offices that honed his skills in finance and governance. By the age of 33, he achieved the consulship, the pinnacle of senatorial ambition. Unlike many of his contemporaries, who sought military commands in the provinces, Antoninus preferred the quieter but equally critical roles of administration. His tenure as a proconsul in Asia, a province renowned for its wealth and complexity, earned him a reputation for fairness, efficiency, and an ability to resolve disputes with minimal conflict. It was during these years that Antoninus formed lasting relationships with influential figures, including Herod's Atticus, a Greek scholar and administrator. These connections not only broadened his cultural perspective but also solidified his reputation as a man of intellect and diplomacy. Hadrian's unexpected choice. By the time Antoninus entered his 50s, he was a respected but relatively unremarkable member of the Roman elite. It was a shock to many when Emperor Hadrian, nearing the end of his life, chose Antoninus as his heir in 138 AD. Why would a ruler known for his complex personality and ambitious projects, such as Hadrian's Wall, choose someone so seemingly unassuming? The answer lies in Hadrian's vision for the future. He saw in Antoninus a stabilizing force, someone who could guide the empire through a peaceful transition while grooming the next generation of leaders. As a condition of his adoption, Antoninus was required to adopt Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus, ensuring a line of succession that balanced competence and loyalty. Antoninus initially hesitated to accept the role, aware of the immense responsibility and the political intrigue it entailed. But Hadrian's declining health and the emperor's trust in him ultimately swayed Antoninus to take on the mantle of Caesar. Upon Hadrian's death in July 138 AD, Antoninus ascended to the throne, marking the beginning of a reign that would redefine Rome's perception of leadership. A legacy begins. The early years of Antoninus' reign set the tone for his approach to governance. He eschewed the pomp and spectacle of his predecessors, focusing instead on consolidating the empire's internal stability. His first act as emperor was to ensure Hadrian's deification, a gesture that underscored his loyalty and respect for tradition. This move, while initially resisted by the Senate, demonstrated Antoninus' ability to navigate Rome's political intricacies with tact and resolve. Antoninus' rise to power was not the tale of a conqueror or a revolutionary. It was the story of a man who understood the value of patience, prudence, and the quiet art of governance. As we move into the next chapters of his life, we'll see how these qualities transformed Rome during one of its most peaceful eras. The reign of stability and administration, governing through peace. In the grand tapestry of Roman history, where emperors are often remembered for their conquests, scandals, or revolutionary reforms, Antoninus Pius offers a stark contrast. His reign, spanning over 2 decades, was characterized by stability, careful governance, and a commitment to peace. Yet, this period of tranquility was anything but mundane. It was, in many ways, a quiet revolution, a testament to the power of prudent administration and the art of delegation. What made Antoninus' rule so unique? Why did his contemporaries admire him, and why do historians continue to puzzle over his legacy? To understand this, we must delve into the intricacies of his governance, his approach to military policy, and his vision for a Rome that thrived not on expansion, but on consolidation. A vision for Rome. From the very outset, Antoninus Pius made it clear that his reign would not be defined by the grandiose displays of his predecessors. While Hadrian had been a restless traveler, micromanaging the empire's farthest provinces, Antoninus chose a different path. He stayed in Italy, governing from the heart of the empire. Critics might have seen this as a lack of ambition, but for Antoninus it was a deliberate choice. He believed that the strength of Rome lay not in constant military campaigns, but in fostering internal stability and efficient administration. One of the first steps he took was to restore the Senate's dignity and authority. Unlike Hadrian, who had often bypassed the Senate in favor of direct imperial control, Antoninus sought to mend this relationship. He worked closely with senators, listening to their concerns and involving them in decision-making processes. This not only bolstered his support among the elite, but also created a sense of shared responsibility in governance. The Antonine Wall and defensive strategy. Perhaps the most debated aspect of Antoninus' reign is his military policy, or, as some might argue, his lack of one. At a time when Roman emperors were expected to expand the empire's borders, Antoninus focused on defense. His approach is best exemplified by the construction of the Antonine Wall in Britannia. Stretching across the narrowest part of Scotland, this wall was a shorter but more fortified successor to Hadrian's Wall. It symbolized a temporary push into northern Britain, aimed at subduing the Brigantes and Caledonian tribes. While the Antonine Wall was eventually abandoned, its construction highlighted Antoninus' preference for strategic defense over risky conquests. But his military strategy was not without its critics. Some viewed his lack of direct military engagement as a sign of weakness. However, Antoninus' ability to maintain peace across the empire for most of his reign suggests otherwise. By delegating military campaigns to capable generals, such as Lollius Urbicus in Britannia, he ensured that Rome's interests were protected without overextending its resources. Infrastructure and tax reforms. Antoninus' reign was also marked by economic stability and growth. One of his most notable achievements was the reduction of tax burdens on the provinces. By cracking down on corruption in the imperial postal system and ensuring fair taxation, he won the goodwill of his subjects. His investments in infrastructure further bolstered the economy. Roads, aqueducts, and public buildings were constructed or repaired across the empire, improving trade and communication. Notably, Antoninus prioritized projects that benefited both Rome and the provinces, ensuring that resources were distributed equitably. One such project was the restoration of roads in Gallia Narbonensis, his ancestral province. These improvements facilitated trade between Rome and southeastern Gaul, a region known for its wine and timber. Such initiatives not only strengthened local economies but also reinforced the unity of the empire. Cultural and religious contributions. Antoninus' reign was not limited to economic and administrative achievements. He was also a patron of culture and religion. While he remained a staunch supporter of traditional Roman deities, he showed remarkable tolerance toward other religions, including Christianity and Judaism. In the realm of culture, Antoninus fostered Greek intellectualism. His friendship with Herodes Atticus, a prominent Greek scholar, is a testament to his admiration for Greek culture. By inviting Herods to tutor Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus, Antoninus ensured that the next generation of rulers would be well-versed in philosophy and the arts. Religiously, he maintained the rituals and traditions of Rome, reinforcing his image as a pious and dutiful emperor. Temples were built and restored during his reign, including those dedicated to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. His commitment to these traditions earned him the title Pius, a recognition of his devotion to both his adoptive father, Hadrian, and the gods. Analyzing Antoninus' impact. While Antoninus Pius may not have been a military conqueror or a revolutionary reformer, his reign set a standard for effective governance. His ability to maintain peace across a vast empire, improve its infrastructure, and uphold its cultural traditions demonstrates the value of steady leadership. In hindsight, the reign of Antoninus Pius might appear uneventful, but perhaps that is its greatest strength. In a world often dominated by chaos and ambition, he showed that a ruler's true legacy lies in the prosperity and stability they leave behind. Challenges on the frontiers and natural disasters. The calm before the storm. Imagine an empire stretching from the wind-swept hills of Britannia to the sun-scorched deserts of Egypt, from the Rhine's icy waters to the fertile valleys of the Tigris. Maintaining order across such vast territories would test the mettle of any ruler. Yet, under Antoninus Pius, Rome entered an era of stability rarely seen in its turbulent history. But peace does not mean the absence of challenges. Beneath the surface of Antoninus' tranquil reign were simmering tensions on the frontiers, devastating natural disasters, and the ever-present need to manage the empire's intricate web of alliances. How did this unassuming emperor navigate these trials? What can his responses teach us about leadership in times of quiet yet profound crisis? Rebellions and unrest on the frontiers. During Antoninus' reign, the empire's frontiers were far from static. While the emperor himself rarely left Italy, relying on his generals and governors to handle military matters, his strategic decisions left an indelible mark on Rome's borders. In Britannia, the construction of the Antonine Wall represented a bold but brief northern push into Caledonia, modern Scotland. The decision to build this wall, spanning the narrow stretch between the Firth of Forth and the Firth of Clyde, reflected Antoninus' commitment to securing the empire's vulnerable edges. The wall, though shorter than Hadrian's, featured more forts and demonstrated advanced engineering. However, the victory was fleeting, as the Antonine Wall was abandoned within 2 decades due to persistent resistance from the local tribes. Antoninus' approach to Britannia exemplifies his broader military philosophy. calculated risk paired with pragmatic retreat. While some criticized the abandonment of the Antonine Wall as a failure, others argue that it showcased the emperor's ability to prioritize resources effectively. Unlike emperors who sought glory through conquest, Antoninus understood that an overextended empire could quickly unravel. A test of Roman resilience. To the south, in the province of Mauritania, modern-day Morocco and Algeria, Rome faced another significant challenge. The Berber tribes of the Atlas Mountains had long been a thorn in the empire's side, conducting raids on Roman settlements along the Mediterranean coast. During Antoninus' reign, these raids escalated into a full-scale rebellion. The emperor responded decisively, deploying legions to quell the unrest. The campaign, though arduous, ultimately succeeded in pushing the Berbers back into the mountains. However, this conflict highlighted the persistent difficulties of maintaining control over Rome's more remote provinces. Antoninus' handling of the rebellion underscores his preference for containment over annihilation, a strategy that preserved resources and avoided prolonged conflict. Earthquakes and recovery efforts. Perhaps one of the most defining aspects of Antoninus' reign was his response to natural disasters. Earthquakes, a frequent threat in the ancient world, struck multiple regions during his time as emperor. The most devastating occurred in Asia Minor, affecting cities like Smyrna, Ephesus, and Nicomedia. Antoninus, who had previously served as proconsul in Asia, took a personal interest in the region's recovery. He provided financial support for reconstruction efforts, rebuilt temples, and restored public buildings. His actions not only demonstrated his compassion but also reinforced his reputation as a ruler deeply invested in the welfare of his subjects. In Ephesus, for example, Antoninus oversaw the rebuilding of critical infrastructure, including aqueducts and bathhouses. These projects not only revitalized the local economy but also served as a symbol of Roman resilience. The emperor's emphasis on recovery and stability ensured that the affected regions remained loyal to Rome, even in the face of adversity. Parthia and Armenia. While Antoninus' reign was largely free from major wars, the eastern frontier posed its own set of challenges. The Parthian Empire, Rome's long-standing rival, sought to exert influence over Armenia, a strategically vital buffer state. When the Armenian throne became vacant, Antoninus acted swiftly, installing a Roman-friendly king and averting a potential crisis. The emperor's approach to the Parthians was marked by diplomacy rather than aggression. By sending letters and envoys rather than legions, Antoninus maintained peace in the region without draining Rome's resources. This restraint reflects his broader philosophy of governance, prioritizing stability and minimizing unnecessary conflict. The role of Marcus Aurelius in crisis management. As Antoninus aged, his adoptive son and heir, Marcus Aurelius, began to take on greater responsibilities. Marcus' involvement in managing crises, particularly in Asia Minor and along the Danube frontier, showcased the continuity of Antoninus' policies. One notable instance was Marcus' role in the aftermath of an earthquake in Smyrna. Coins minted during this period commemorate his efforts in the city's reconstruction, highlighting the collaborative nature of Antoninus' administration. This partnership between the emperor and his heir not only ensured effective governance but also laid the groundwork for a smooth transition of power. The emperor's legacy on the frontiers. Antoninus' pious reign is often described as uneventful, but this characterization overlooks the complexity of his challenges. From rebellions in Mauritania to natural disasters in Asia Minor, from the construction and abandonment of the Antonine Wall to diplomatic tensions with Parthia, his reign required constant vigilance and adaptability. What sets Antoninus apart is his ability to address these issues without resorting to excessive force or dramatic gestures. His focus on diplomacy, infrastructure, and the well-being of his subjects reflects a leadership style that prioritized long-term stability over short-term gains. The hidden strength of quiet leadership. In an age when rulers were often judged by their conquests, Antoninus Pius demonstrated that true strength lies in the ability to govern wisely and compassionately. His reign may lack the dramatic flair of other emperors, but its legacy endures in the peace and prosperity he left behind. As we consider the challenges Antoninus faced, from rebellious tribes to devastating earthquakes, we are reminded that leadership is not always about grand gestures. Sometimes, it is the quiet, steady hand of a ruler like Antoninus Pius that ensures the survival and success of an empire. Legacy and reflection on a peaceful reign. A farewell to Rome's quiet emperor. As twilight descended over Rome in 161 AD, the empire bid farewell to one of its most unassuming yet transformative rulers. Antoninus Pius, the emperor who shunned military glory and political theatrics, passed away at the age of 75, leaving behind a legacy often overshadowed by the more dramatic reigns of his predecessors and successors. Yet, the true brilliance of Antoninus' rule lies not in its battles or conquests, but in its remarkable ability to sustain peace, stability, and prosperity for over 2 decades. What can we learn from this emperor who ruled with quiet determination? Was his approach a blueprint for enduring leadership, or did it merely delay the inevitable challenges that would plague Rome in the years to come? A life of duty. By the late 150s AD, Antoninus' health began to deteriorate. Despite his physical decline, he remained committed to his responsibilities as emperor. A hallmark of his reign was his collaborative approach to governance, particularly with Marcus Aurelius, who had increasingly assumed administrative duties. This gradual delegation of power ensured a seamless transition, reflecting Antoninus' foresight and dedication to the empire's future. In his final days, Antoninus' stoic resolve shone through. According to historical accounts, he passed away with dignity, reportedly giving equanimity as the password for the night before turning to rest eternally. This simple yet profound gesture encapsulates his philosophy of balance, restraint, and calmness even in the face of death. Strength or weakness? One of the most debated aspects of Antoninus' legacy is his steadfast commitment to peace. While his decision to avoid expansionist wars may seem unremarkable at first glance, it represented a bold departure from the norm. At a time when Roman emperors were celebrated for their conquests, Antoninus' focus on diplomacy and internal development was revolutionary. Critics might argue that his reluctance to engage in military campaigns left Rome vulnerable. Yet, a closer analysis reveals a calculated strategy. By reinforcing existing borders, Antoninus preserved the empire's resources and avoided the costly wars that had strained his predecessors. This approach not only stabilized Rome's economy but also allowed for investments in infrastructure, culture, and social welfare. Moreover, his defensive policies laid the groundwork for a new understanding of Rome's identity. No longer defined solely by territorial expansion, the empire under Antoninus became a beacon of governance, cultural exchange, and legal reform, a model for sustainable power. The legacy of legal and social reforms. One of Antoninus' most enduring contributions was his dedication to legal and social reforms. Guided by a sense of justice and compassion, he introduced measures that protected the rights of vulnerable populations, including slaves, women, and children. These reforms not only humanized Roman law but also strengthened societal cohesion. For instance, Antoninus enacted laws to prevent the re-enslavement of freed individuals and provided greater protections for slaves against abusive masters. He also simplified legal proceedings, ensuring that justice was more accessible to all citizens. Such measures reflected his belief that a stable society required fairness and accountability. A bridge between Rome and Greece, Antoninus' reign was a cultural renaissance that bridged the traditions of Rome with the intellectual heritage of Greece. Unlike many of his predecessors, who saw Greek culture as a threat to Roman identity, Antoninus embraced it, recognizing its potential to enrich Roman society. His support for Greek scholars, architects, and artists was evident in the monuments and institutions that flourished under his rule. Temples were restored, aqueducts completed, and cities revitalized. This cultural revival not only celebrated the empire's diversity but also reinforced its unity by fostering a shared sense of pride and purpose. The power of stability. Antoninus Pius' reign challenges conventional notions of leadership. In an age where ambition often led to conflict, he demonstrated that stability could be a powerful force for progress. His ability to balance tradition with innovation, diplomacy with authority, and restraint with action made him a model ruler whose influence extended far beyond his lifetime. Yet, his reign also raises questions about the sustainability of peace. By avoiding conflict, did Antoninus merely postpone the inevitable challenges that would later test Rome's resilience? Or did his example provide a template for how empires can thrive without constant warfare? A wise ruler or an unimaginative bureaucrat? Historians have long debated Antoninus' place in the pantheon of Roman emperors. Was he a visionary leader who prioritized the well-being of his people? Or was he an unimaginative bureaucrat who coasted on the achievements of his predecessors? The answer likely lies somewhere in between. While his reign lacked the dramatic flair of figures like Augustus or Trajan, it was precisely this lack of drama that defined his success. In a period of relative peace, Antoninus demonstrated the value of governance that prioritized long-term stability over short-term glory. The lessons of Antoninus Pius. As we reflect on the life and reign of Antoninus Pius, his story offers timeless lessons for leaders in any era. His emphasis on justice, compassion, and prudence reminds us that the greatest leaders are not always those who seek the spotlight, but those who quietly dedicate themselves to the service of their people. Antoninus Pius may not have been the most celebrated emperor in Roman history, but his legacy endures as a testament to the enduring power of stability and the quiet strength of wise leadership.